All right. Welcome, everyone, to the energy efficiency session of the 2021 Northern Kentucky Restoration Weekend. My name is Christopher Myers, and I am serving as the moderator for this session. Please use the Q&A function of Zoom to ask your questions throughout the presentation. And please also let us know through chat if you have any problems hearing or seeing the speaker. Our speaker is Toni Winston with Tiburon Energy. Toni Winston is the founder and president of the Winston Family Group, LLC, and Tiburon Energy and Construction. Toni is one of the 2011 founding members of the Northern Kentucky Restoration Weekend Planning Committee. Her expertise is in helping homeowners make their homes more energy efficient, thus saving money on utility bills, as well as improving the home's overall indoor air quality. Her company, Tiburon Energy and Construction, can assist homeowners in achieving maximum energy efficiency. If interested, topics such as water use reduction, waste stream diversion practices, and unique sustainability practices can be shared with homeowners. Thank you, Toni, for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everybody, on this hot but beautiful Sunday afternoon. We're glad to be sharing time with you. And my topic is about energy efficiency in your historic home. As you can see in this background slide, historic homes and urban settings can coexist, usually coexist. Before, as the big, broader 30,000-foot overview on this topic, we have to understand the construction of homes. These older historic homes are built, and I'm going to be kind of really generic about it. I know each home is unique, but in order to get through this in the time allotted, we're going to have to talk in big generic terms. But older homes are made with using balloon frame construction. And when you think about the way it's constructed or how homes were constructed back before platform framing, they would take the big long timbers and piece a wall together, raise the wall and put the four walls together, put the floor, and then put stairs and put another floor. So and then the exterior cladding would go on. That's why it's called a balloon, because there is a void in between the interior framing members and the exterior cladding. There is a space. And that is important when you are looking at ways to be efficient in historic homes based on that specific construction. So this topic is not specifically addressing wall insulation, but we're going to go to the best use of your money, shall we say, and that is always in the attic plane. So we'll be talking about the attic plane, we'll be talking about knee walls, then we'll be talking about down at the rim joist, and then attic plane, rim joist, and then how your house works as a living, breathing system. So there's this second construction slideshow deals with how the knee walls are constructed and then the rim joist down in the basement. This picture, and I also have one behind me, although I can't seem to get it in the screen, but the reason I brought this in is it addresses the way houses are constructed now, which is called platform framing. And what's unique about this particular Energy Star image is if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you will see the red line. It's talking about the home's envelope. That's what we really focus on in the energy efficiency world, is creating thermal boundaries with pressure boundaries and creating a nice tight envelope. How can a homeowner know if their home is not energy efficient? What is the easiest and best way but to look at your utility bill? If you look at both the gas usage and the electric uses on this particular slide, you will notice the huge peaks of gas during, not surprising, November, December, January, February, and starting to drop off down in March. Then you look at the electric use and it starts to peak in June, July, August, and September. If you take a line, just to create a line across the bottom, you can create a mean on what you use in gas for cooking and water heating, and what you use for electricity, for your refrigerator, your computers, all the normal uses of items in your house. What we're looking at as energy auditor is those peaks. So we know by looking at this particular, just a snapshot of what's going on in this house, is that in the winter months, A lot of money is being spent on heating the home, and a lot of that heat is escaping through the envelope of the house. We also can see conversely in the electric use during the summer months when the air conditioner is turned on full blast, a lot of that cold conditioned air is escaping outside the envelope of the house. So this is, anybody can pull up their Duke electric bill, and if you do it online, it's on page 3, and just look and see what's happening within your own particular home. When we are looking at a home, trying to determine it's creating it the most efficient, we know that in our region, the region 4, we want to build the insulation up to R38. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we progress through this slideshow. So when you're thinking about creating efficiencies in the envelope of your house, you always hit the top first, which is your attic. And I'll use Christopher. I'm sitting next to me. Christopher has a shaved head. So what does he do when he goes out in the winter? Very first thing, he puts a hat on his head. If he didn't do that, all the heat from his body, he could be completely bundled up from the neck down, but he would still be losing heat from his head. So when we do the assessments and when we do the energy retrofits, we always start in the attic plane. And this is the attic. This is little hole 2 by 2 or 2 by 3 is where the assessor or auditor should absolutely be poking their head and looking to see what's going on in that attic plane. So we have climbed through closets, and I can't tell you the number of shoes that have to be set aside before we're able to get in and look at an attic space. But that is the attic scuttle. That is what it looks like using an IR camera in the summer. So if you just, the little snapshot of this picture shows that the air conditioner is on, because you can see the drywall is blue, and that attic scuttle has no insulation on it whatsoever. So the heat of that attic, hot air always goes to cold air. So the heat of that attic is trying to make its way through that piece of wood to get down into your living space where it's colder. So this is a picture of an attic. It's just a little picture showing the framing members and the boards. And this particular picture is where all of the old insulation was removed. A homeowner can request to have the insulation removed, especially if they have had bats or mice living in that space for a long period of time, and the existing insulation, whether it's rock wool or fiberglass, is funky. You kind of want to get that out just because the detritus in the old insulation. This shows a picture of an attic that has used insulation bats with that brown craft paper. There's a couple things going on with this. Number one, it's installed improperly because that brown craft paper needs to be flipped over and it's closest to your living space. A couple other things, if you look at this picture, you will see inconsistencies. Over in one corner, you will see the pink insulation flowing through, and some pictures you will see wiring and electrical boxes coming through. Those are all penetrations into the living space where the heat from the winter goes up into the attic, and where the heat from the attic in the summer goes back down into the living space. This is a picture of one of the walls in the attic space. Some of it is really good because the craft paper is, you actually don't want craft paper here, you want a vapor barrier, but there's a lot of inconsistencies in this. And just through the rules of thermodynamics, air always follows the path of least resistance. Hot air always goes towards cold, and moisture always goes towards dry. So creating a consistent thermal boundary and pressure boundary is where you're going to create your efficiencies. If you look at this particular one, you see the clay piping coming up, the reddish pinkish colored, and you'll see that insulation, the yellow insulation, is funky looking because of dust, that's an indication that there is air movement in and out around that penetration. So everywhere there is dust or spider webs, that's an indication for an opportunity for improvement. You can end up creating a better space. Let's go back and look at it, a better space, if you can close off all that air movement. This is just a picture of the interior space when it was cold outside. So your warm air is coming from your living space into that attic space. That's chases. Any insulation person or auditor worth their salt will uncover multiple chases like that. This chase actually is from the attic space and goes all the way down into the basement. And why does that matter? It matters because when you have the hot air in the summer that's in your attic, it is going to be wafting down that chase, and it's going through the interstitial spaces. It's going to present that warm air in your living room, in your bedrooms, in your kitchens, all the way down into the basement. And then conversely, in the summer, when it's warm and or cool in the house, it's going to have a reverse movement on that air. So you're spending money to go out to the outside spaces. This is a picture of a knee wall, and I'm hoping everybody knows what a knee wall is. When we were live, we were able to kind of define it by drawing on a whiteboard to make sure that everybody understood the terms. But in cases where that people think that they have a ghost in their house, and as they close one door, another door opens, that's pressure movement. It happens a lot with these knee wall doors because it is just a little wooden door, sometimes a hollow core door, that's separating the living space from the unconditional space. So when you look at this slide picture, when you look at what's considered the knee wall, it's the two vertical planes. This is the knee wall floor. This is the knee wall. Then you have the little rafters going up into this little teeny attic peak. So that's what you're seeing in this picture. Here's a better picture of a knee wall. That yellow insulation is what is separating that unconditioned storage space from the conditioned living space in a bedroom. And this is, again, a very, very good picture of the quantity of air that's moving around in these spaces. If you see that, you know that there is air moving, and you know that there's an opportunity for improvement on cutting down that airflow. If I'm going through these slides fast, slow me down. So we've talked about the top of the house. We've talked about the attic. We've talked about the knee walls. We've talked about the floor, living space, which is your walls. And then we go down. The third opportunity is down within what's called the rim joist. So you have your foundation wall, then you have the rim joist that's built on top of that foundation wall, and then your balloon framing was built rafters up from that sill joist, that rim joist. It's a huge, huge opportunity for energy efficiency in this space, and I'll show you why right there. If you look at the picture that has a little tree and you see the yellow pieces that are shoved in there, that was an attempt to stop airflow. And it was a very good attempt, could be better, but it was an attempt that made a difference. It needs to be in all instances, whatever you're doing, in all instances, there has to be uniformity in what you do. Because as we talked about the thermodynamics, the air, the pressure, and the moisture will always go to the path of least resistance. So if there's uniformity across the barrier, then it's going to be impenetrable. The picture on the left with that, to me, that is from a water heater. That's an exhaust for water heater, which we'll get into health and safety too, but just let's look at this rim joist. There is nothing except that little bitty piece of wood separating the exterior from the interior. And that's where the insulating teams or the energy efficiency teams go along that entire rim joist barrier, air seal it and insulate it. Then some homes may have a crawl space. It's the kind of creepy, scary space that nobody ever wants to get into, but it's a place that you have a lot of air loss and heat loss and moisture. If you think about it in terms of this particular picture of this particular crawl space, it does have a vapor barrier on the dirt, which is good. If you think about a crawl space that does not have a vapor barrier on the dirt, think about the moisture in that dirt as it wicks up, because that moisture is going to that dry wood framing members and could erode and weaken and rot out those framing members. So you have to put a vapor barrier down on a crawl space. It has to go up the wall. It has to be sealed off. Then you have to get all the penetrations that are within the frame floor, and then you have to insulate it, and then you have to put a barrier on it. So consider that an opportunity. That's that same frame floor using an IR camera. And I brought my IR camera because I wanted to drive a point home, but there's not enough of a delta thermal to make a difference. Today's temperature outside versus what we're experiencing inside. So unfortunately, I can't do the big wow factor with that camera.
And Toni, can I jump in and ask a question? So this view here, just to be clear, is the blue showing the areas of high thermal transfer, or is it the red areas?
Showing you the current temperature. The blue, this is a crawl space, so it is down below the earth. So it's in ambient, sustainable and ambient temperature. That's why it's showing blue. You're looking at the 68 degrees, which is different on that floor. So it's picking up the heat from that living space and dropping it down. So that's the two differences. And may I scroll back to a different, you want to talk about temperature differences? So close your eyes, guys, while I scroll back and look at this other picture so you don't get nauseous while we're looking at the one. That probably is a better indication because there's such a huge difference in the temperatures. So the interior space is probably, it's not cued off with the temperatures, but the interior space, which would be the ceiling plane in that closet, is looking to be around 70 degrees. But the scuttle access door is looking to be 90 degrees. So if you have, should you call upon, so I'm going to scroll through, so close your eyes while we get back down to where we were, so you don't get nauseous. So if you do have an auditor come for to do an energy audit in your home, see if they're going to bring in their IR camera. That will be that's huge indication that the person is very serious about what they're doing. And this is another picture of a crawl space that I guess somebody just took their paint sprayer and sprayed everything white in hopes of making it look better. But there's inconsistency, there's erosion, there's moisture issues. And so we don't never say anything is bad. We always call it an opportunity for improvement. So that's a very good opportunity for improvement. Part of what you can expect or should ask for is a health and safety analysis as well. It's not a big time consuming process, but your energy auditor should be looking at the mechanical equipment in your house. You can have, when you're thinking about your home as a whole, your attic space must breathe, your living space must breathe, but the two of those spaces should not be breathing together. And if you chase every single penetration and fenestration and hole and pipe and you close the house down, you make it too tight because it needs to breathe. When we look at that as a real, very much a concern health and safety issue, and there are mathematical equations to determine how much your house should breathe. Looking at this picture on the furnace, let's just say it hadn't been serviced for some time and it had noxious gases spilling into the living space. That is spilling, those noxious gases are spilling into the space where you're living. And that is no, that is what you don't want. So looking at it, making sure that it's properly functioning. Your energy auditor is not an HVAC guy, not typically, but they can tell you if there's a problem, and they will look at your water heater as well. This is a gas water heater that has the picture on the left by the nice drawing from the child. It has multiple things going on with it. First of all, it's an encased blanket, if you will. Down at the bottom, down at the floor level, that's where the gas is going in. And they have it covered up with a blanket. That's a real safety issue. Secondly, up at the top where that little dome is, that's where the hot gases come out. And as you can see, the graying component, there's spillage from that water heater. If you look at the picture on the right with the orange cord, that you can see that there's issues with spillage and it gets condensation and it melts stuff. So if your auditor comes over and says, I suggest that you get this checked out, and here's the reason why, and they show you the pictures, get it checked out. It's for your own personal health and safety. Carbon monoxide monitors everywhere, everywhere. Even if you have a fully electric house, put one in your kitchen by your garage, because your car, when you start your car in the morning, it's emitting noxious gases. So the very first symptom of carbon monoxide poisoning is that of confusion. And we've all been guilty of it. You hear that alarm going off in the middle of the night. It's in a winter cycle, and you think, I'm just going to pull the battery out of that stupid blazing carbon monoxide monitor. That's not the first thing you do. The first thing you do should be to open a window and get some fresh air and then go investigate what's going on. Because if you're in the sense of confusion, you might pull that plug, and it's better to err on the side of being annoyed than it is to stay asleep and never wake up again. So put your carbon monoxide monitors all over your house and check them regularly, because it does make sense. We talked about the envelope. We talked about the attic breathing. We talked about the house breathing. We're not wanting the two of them to breathe together. It's easy to do, or it's not easy because it's a really hard, tough job. But when your insulating team goes into your attic plane, they're going to get all the penetrations and the chases and the top of walls, and they're really going to take care of the top of that envelope, and they're going to make sure that they do dams and all sorts of stuff to ensure that your attic plane is good. But if you open up your claw underneath your base cabinet, whether it's in your kitchens or your bathrooms, look and see the penetration that the plumbers left you. And I'm not saying anything about any plumbers at all, because that too is a tough job. But in some cases, there's a pipe hole this big for a pipe this big. So if that's the case, just put it all back together and caulk around it. The lower right-hand corner, the picture with the carpet, that's showing at a baseboard where it's inconsistent and not sealed down. You look at on the left-hand side bottom, you look and see other plumbing penetrations. These are opportunities. None of this is wrong. It's all opportunities. I don't know if anybody has used their dog or a Kroger bag to keep their fireplace doors from popping open, but we do see that a lot. That's because air is coming through your chimney cap, down your chimney, and coming into your house. That particular event is called a stack effect. And that's not happening from within your attic plane, that's happening from exterior forces. There's a product called a Chimney Balloon, and we've used them a lot. And you can buy a Chimney Balloon at Amazon, and during the summer months, you just kind of pull the damper down, put the chimney balloon together, put it in that space, close that damper, and then you think, oh, what if I forget about it and turn my fire on in the winter? Well, they give you a little reminder that you put on the fireplace grate. And what that does, that keeps that hot air from a stack effect swinging that air back into your house. Plus it'll make your dog a little more comfortable as well. There's another good picture of the IR camera, and that's a threshold. The difference in air coming in or air going out. We consider it store-bought air, not just air, not like you're breathing outside, but you're paying to keep that air warm or you're paying to keep that air cool. You don't want it going outside or it being diluted by hot air coming from the outside in. So that's why weather stripping makes sense. There are all sorts of opportunities to make your house energy efficient. Everything from your handy dandy caulk. If you're a handy person, go around with all and look at all these opportunities, the fenestrations, around your windows, around your doors, around your baseboards, and you could end up spending the rest of your life chasing air. But you just want to make sure that what you're doing is the most impactful. The air sealing, insulation, damming is in your attic plane is the most impactful. It's like putting a hat on your head. You will automatically, your house will be quieter. Automatically, you'll be spending less money on your utility bills. And the indoor air quality will improve because you're not wafting any of that dirty, nasty attic air into your living space. The guy down in the corner, he's doing rim joists. He's sealing off rim joists. And you put a bead of caulk, you cut polystyrene, you dry fit it in, and then you caulk it again. All of these have really, really positive benefits to a homeowner when they're looking at reducing their utility bill as well as improving their indoor air quality. I brought a couple examples of insulation. They're around here somewhere. It's over here. And we'll show, maybe if we have time at the end, we'll show it. I put this slide in because first of all, you're attempting to make your house more efficient for you and your family. It's going to spend less money. It's going to have better indoor air quality, all the things which will improve your living in that space. But in the greater Cincinnati area, they have a component called greening the MLS. And this was a really hard-won battle to get these measures in the MLS. And when you're looking to buy a home, you want to know what it's going to cost to live there. And if you as a diligent homeowner did all these efficient features, you want credit for it. It will increase the resale value of your home. And this is where it's empirically recorded. Your utility bills, you can show this is what it was before, this is what it is now. All of these are tangible measures that will help when you go to sell your home, up to and including water efficiencies. I included a slide for the resources, but this is very, very easy to find online. All you have to do is Google up greening the MLS, Greater Cincinnati. It's very easy to find. I always get this question, solar and the historic home. We have one of the panelists, one of the founding members has solar in her historic, no point in having it in your home, it doesn't do you any good, on her historic home, but I am not the preservation person. Ask your community, your local preservation person, what the ordinances are, what the requirements are. The National Park Service also has a tab on their website that addresses solar specifically. So that's always good to know. Another low impact, high yield is energy efficient landscaping. Not only is it addresses curb appeal, but it also can help in energy efficiency reduction. You cannot change the orientation of your home, but you can change the way that the sun beats against your house by properly planting landscaping. So on the west, You want deciduous trees, and obviously you want to know your boundary lines and plant them appropriately. But during the summer, if you have a nice big deciduous tree, it's going to shield that sun, and it's going to cut your air conditioning bill. And then in the winter, when the leaves fall off the tree and the sun comes through your window, it's going to cut your need to heat that home, because you're going to get solar heat gain. So there's a lot from the outside that you can do to eliminate energy use. Here's one thing too, that we used to have a talk specifically, maybe next year as we move back into a live presentation. This is, if you're doing anything in your home, where is my red? Is to know what you're messing with in your home. It's an easy way to test. The EPA has these booklets. They're downloadable, or you can get them from any paint store. There is a method in which, if you want to paint your trim, there's a way to double check to make sure that it is not lead based. If you're going to scrape it, if you're just going to paint over it, it's okay. But if you're going to scrape it off, you need to know. These test kits are really nice to have and to use. Just make sure you Google up exactly how to use them, because you don't want to just score down and check. You want to take your knife and go on an angle to get down into the layers of the paint if you plan on painting or scraping off the paint inside your house. What else? And that's why we do it. And I know I went fast through a lot of this, but do we have any questions? Oh, we have a lot of time. I hope we have a lot of questions.
We have, I think, about 20 minutes left.
Oh my gosh, I should slow back down.
That's okay. So one of our sessions that we had earlier in the conference was by Lindsay Jones and Morgan Graff. They were talking about identifying wood rot and treatment plans. And they talked about moisture being locked in. And it struck me when you were talking about the need for rooms to breathe. You mentioned it's possible to button down a space too well, where you lock in the moisture and prevent that airflow. How can the average person figure out if they're getting close to that point? What are the warning signs? If we're going to go around and stuff insulation into the holes that we see, how do we figure out how do we stop before we create a problem?
That's a good question. There are multiple areas. Well, let's start with the crawl space. You know that that's a dirt floor, and you don't want that moisture coming up into your house. So that vapor barrier on the floor, vapor barrier up on the walls, creating a barrier so it doesn't get into your house for rot. Then you have inside your home, the areas for which you're going to get the most rot inside your home is the bathrooms and the kitchens. So knowing that historic homes typically don't have an exhaust fan, but you need to get that moisture out. And the way to combat it, if you do not have an exhaust fan, and this is not the most popular way to do it, but it is the most efficient way to do it, is open the window when you take the hot showers, because that moisture has got to get out. Otherwise, it's going to sit on those surfaces. And if those surfaces are not sealed and protected, then that's going to rot them. Then up on the attic, inside the attic, you have to address the moisture from the source. Do you have a leaking roof? Is it sliding down the roof rafters? Is it dropping onto the framing? So you have to address it at the source. And you want to make sure your attic plane is completely sealed off from the interior and not allowing the pressure and moisture to flow from the interior up into the attic. So and we did have that. So close your eyes and I scroll all the way back to one of those pictures from the beginning where you can see moisture issues in the attic. And that's because it had a bad roof. Nope, I don't know where it is. So, and if you have issues down at the rim joist, that's coming from the outside. So that's bulk moisture coming from the outside coming in. To make sure your gutters work, make sure your downspouts work. make sure that you grade the dirt away from the house, and so it can't drop down and then go to the path of least resistance and go to foundation.
So I'd never heard the term store-bought air before, but I thought that was just really impactful because it made me realize we're paying a premium for conditioned air. Why aren't we treating it like something we've bought? Um, can you talk a little bit about for the common historic home, the passive systems that may have been built with? So the traditions of lowering a top sash, I think in summer, even some of those practices are lost arts. Or if you have interior transoms, how you can use that to help airflow in your house, in your historic house.
That's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And maybe this is an opportunity to bring up the National Park Service has just wells of information. They have 6 things you may not know about energy efficiency in your historic home. I have this as collateral material, but I would like to say that I was genius enough to ferret out the information, but I didn't. I found it on the National Park Service. So you can find it too, looking for energy efficiencies in your historic home through the NPS. But yes, historic homes were built to be efficient. You have the porches that create the depth and the shading and the cooling. You have the transoms that you drop down because heat rises. So you have the transoms that drop down and allow that heat to go through that transom out. You keep your windows open, so it creates a convective loop and moving air throughout the house. So they were inherently set up. Now, we're a little more pampered these days because we don't want to have sticky air, we want to have cold air. But at that, if you use the natural born efficiencies within your historic home, that will improve what they call the shoulder periods from between when you turn your heating on and your air conditioning on, and then that will drop your utility bills.
And so the way that we build buildings today, it seems like we're very focused on, it's almost like we believe we can button these spaces down so tight we can control the air much better. But some of those principles, as we apply them to historic buildings, we have to be careful about how we're applying them. So can you talk a little bit about, I guess, safe or best practices for caulking and installing insulation in historic homes?
Yes, and let me touch on one point you talked about, the air movement through the house. So I mentioned a couple of times, and perhaps I was kind of glazed over it, but your attic needs to breathe and your interior living space needs to breathe. They do not need to breathe together. You have natural air changes per minute that is measured. And you have to measure it through a diagnostic tool called a blower door. So you have air changes per minute, and through your energy auditor should be able to do this diagnostic testing, tell you exactly how much air should be flowing through your house. And actually, as they do the blow, and I don't want to say he, because there's a lot of energy auditors that are she's, that he or she are doing it. They should be able to tell you what you should breathe and what you're actually doing. And that's your opportunity for improvement. And so if you end up knowing that your home needs to breathe this certain amount of air and it is excessively high, that's your air sealing and that's your insulation. If you do the testing, particularly in some newer homes, Chris, I've never seen it in an older home, but in the newer homes, they are built so tight that here's where it should be based on where you are in the zone, how many stories it is, how many people live in the house. So it's really very mathematical. But if it's too tight, then the mechanical ventilation is brought in.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier, if we as homeowners were trying to find a professional group to help us test these things, that we should ask them to bring an IR camera. I'd never heard of that. I wouldn't even know what questions to ask to make sure that, I'm getting a really good company. But I just ask in general, what kinds of professionals can help us identify, I'll say, improper air movement and energy efficiencies to add to a house?
And that's a good question, because we've worked really long and hard in this industry, and we don't want to be compared to Bubba in a truck. We've got a lot of schooling, a lot of education. Ask questions such as, what are your credentials? How many homes have you audited? What is the average improvement that a homeowner can expect? Can I call some of your homeowners for references? Just due diligence on finding the person.
And so did I hear you say that this field is called home auditing?
Home energy auditing.
Home energy auditing? Okay.
Mhm.
So,
And ask, and every energy auditor that I know has an IR camera. So ask them, are you bringing your IR camera? You won't be able to get much of a differential if it's 70 degrees in your house and 80 degrees outside. So you could bring an IR camera, but you're not going to see much difference. So the bigger the temperature swings are, the more you're going to be able to see the pretty pictures. The auditor can open up the attic scuttle and look in there right away and tell you what you need. If you've got 2 inches of insulation, you need 14 more inches of insulation. If you have none, you need 16. And that's what you're building to. There is, here it is over here, Cellulose, which is the #1 used attic insulation material. And that's just made out of recycled newspapers and books. It's just books. It does have a fire retardant in it and a little bit of a pest product in it. Not to encourage pests, but retard pests. But this is the #1. They also use fiberglass in an attic. And for me personally, for the health and safety component, I don't want fiberglass floating around as particulates in the air that I'm breathing. So just for me personally, but there's a lot of people that believe that the fiberglass is the way to go, although it's don't have the good characteristics. And you want to build to at least an R48. And the R means resistance to air movement, resistance on that hot air, cold air, store-bought air, transference from one another. So you're building to an R48 in your attic.
thank you. So you mentioned lead-based paint safety practices. Let me ask, are there any works you've seen, I'd say the average homeowner do, that are best left for professionals? Like something you would recommend we don't even attempt if we're just, average level handy?
If you have taken the time and done the testing on your baseboards, you have to go kind of around the room. You can't do one single spot in time test. But if you are in your room and you test the trim on this frame, and then you test the baseboard on that wall, and then you test the crown molding here, and you tested at least 4 spots within that space, and you define and you see that the little red dauber comes up, that's a lot of lead if you're wanting to strip it all the way down to the natural wood. And yes, you could do it, and yes, but it's a matter of creating a room that doesn't have air movement going with the rest of the house, and it's isolated, and you're in protective gear, and you're wearing respirators, and as you come out, you clean everything and leave. I mean, you kind of have to be like one of these cicadas backing out of the shell as you come out of that room. It's really very, very labor intensive. And if your goal is to get that beautiful old wood back to its natural form, it may be something that you let a professional do. And they're professional lead safe renovators. Look for the lead safe renovator.
Okay, and the last question that I'll throw at you. So this particular presentation has been focused on energy efficiency, but certainly there's other kinds of efficiencies that can be added to historic homes to make them more comfortable. I'd say more frugal as far as utility bills. Can you just highlight broadly some of the other work that your company or companies like yours might do for other types of efficiencies?
I kind of swung this little water safe nozzle, shower nozzle at the beginning of the presentation. And water safe, look for water safe appliances because they put a lot of air with it. So you still feel like you're getting the nice shower with the water rolling over you, but the water is actually commingling with air. So you're using far less water than you would ordinarily use with the shower. There are water sense toilets. There's water sense in your kitchen faucets. So water use reduction, that's one of them. Landscaping that does not require a lot of oscillating water use. So native and adaptive plants are beautiful to use in this region. So you get them planted, you get them established, and then they will just grow from year to year. I was thinking LED. Everybody loves LED, and it's really significant, especially if you have recessed cans in your home. There is a product, when we first started doing this, these products were like $45 a piece. So you have the cans, you take out the old guts, the lights, and you can put an LED light in there, which is never have to replace, and it creates a complete, once you caulk around it, a complete air seal. So you're getting use of reduction in energy use, and you're getting air movement reduction. So LEDs are a great way to go, and they have come down in price point just down that slippery slope. And in fact, if you contact Duke Energy, in some cases, they're giving them away. I got 2 boxes of LED lights.
Great. Well, Toni, thank you so much for all of this incredible information. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Last thing I'd like to do is thank everyone for attending the conference this year. It's definitely been interesting being in a virtual format, but we thank everyone for participating, coming out virtually. We're going to send out a survey to all of the attendees shortly after the event, but please check in on our website, nkYrestoration.com, for more talks, events, and resources for historic property owners. Thank you all. Have a great day.